Lesson 8, Dividing Fractions and Mixed Numbers. Goal: to divide fractions by mixed numbers by first converting the mixed numbers into a fraction with a value larger than 1. Use equations to find quotients.
Our first example says, Carly has 4.5 walls left to paint in order for all of the bedrooms in her house to have the same color paint. However, she has used almost all of her paint and has only 5/6 of a gallon left. How much paint can she use on each wall in order to have enough paint to paint the remaining walls? Will the answer be greater or less than 1? So that's the first thing that we want to try to figure out. What we have is the 5/6. We want to divide that by the 4.5 walls. So if you think about, if you start with a fraction and you're dividing it by a whole number, then we're going to have less than 1. I'm going to go ahead and say less than 1. The estimated answer. So 5/6 we could write as 1. And 4.5 I could round up to 5. And if I were to divide 1 by 5, I would get 1/5. So now I want to figure out my exact answer. So I'm going to take my 5/6 and divide it by 4.5. So in order to divide by a mixed number, I first have to convert this to improper. So we talked about this in a previous lesson. So so I can do the shortcut. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So this is the same as 5/6 divided by 9/2. Because again, there's in 4 wholes, you would have 2 halves, and then another 2 halves, another 2 halves, another 2 halves, making 8 halves, plus the 1/2 to make the 9 halves there. So for this, I can go ahead and use the multiplying by the reciprocal, the multiplicative inverse, to get my answer. We have already proven that we can use models, so now it's okay to show it just with the math. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply across, and I would get 10 over 54. That can be simplified. If you want, you can look at some of the numbers across, and a 2 and a 6, you can divide those both by 2. So there is such a thing as cross-reducing. That's up to you personally, what is easier for you. I like to do that ahead of time to have my number all the way in simplest form as I multiply across. But we can also just multiply across and then reduce. So we can divide both of these by 2. I divide this by 2. So the answer would be 5/27. That's how much paint she can use on each wall in order to have enough for the remaining walls that she needs to paint. On B, it just says calculate the quotient. Okay, so will the answer be greater than or less than 1? We're starting off with a fraction and we're dividing by a whole number. So again, it's going to be less than 1. And if I were to estimate this, 2/5 is close to 1/2. 3 and 4/7, I could say that's about 4. So if I were to divide 1/2 by 4, I could do a model to show divided 1 2, 3, 4. So the answer is this. This is 1 out of 4. So the answer would be 1 out of 8. So the estimate would be about an 1/8. So for my exact answer, I'm going to do 2/5 divided by 3 4/7. I'm going to convert this to a mixed number. So this is 21 plus 4 makes 25. And again, you can look to the numbers across to see if you can reduce ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and show you that way. 5 and the 25, I can divide both of those by 5. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And so now when I multiply across, I get 10/7. Divided by, this is 21 25/7, but I have to multiply by the reciprocal, so I have to flip this. 2/5 times 7 20/5. And when I multiply across, I get 14 25 125. 14 125ths. And that is always simplified. Two more samples to show. Again, I'm going to write 2/5. I'm going to convert this to an improper fraction. So this would be 31/10. Multiply 10 by 3 to get 30. So that would be 30/10 and 3 wholes, and then plus the 1. So now I'm going to write it as multiplication. So I'd have to get the reciprocal of 31/10, which is 10 31s. And then I'm going to show how I can cross reduce. Divide both of those by 5. I get 4 31s. Had I just multiplied across, I would have got 20 155s. And then I would have to divide by 5 at the end to get 4 31s. So you can see that either way, you have to divide by 5. Sometimes it might be easier as far as multiplying and give smaller numbers to multiply. That's your choice. Over here I have 4 1/3 divided by 4/7. So this one I have, if I think about the estimating, I would have like 4 divided by 1. So the answer, the estimate, would be a number larger than 1. So this would be 12 plus 1 is 13/3 divided by 4/7. I still take the reciprocal of the second fraction. You can look to see if you can simplify, but you cannot. 13 times 7, that would be 21. So that's 91. And then in order to figure out how many times 12 can go into 91, I can go ahead and set up a division problem if it's easier. And then you can, 12 can't go into 9, 12 can go into 91, and 8 would be 96, that's too big. So 7 is 84. 11 minus 4 is 7, so you always want to make sure that that number is less than what you're dividing by, that divisor. And so now I just put the 7 12s, 7 as the numerator, 12 as the denominator, and so it would be 7 and 7 12s.